Herzlich willkommen zu Music Talk, dem Music- und Sound-Production-Podcast aus Berlin.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu Music Talk angezerrt. Mein Name ist Gunnar Seitz. Wir sind hier im Gibson Showroom und heute sitze ich hier mit Danko Jones. Hi Danko.
Hello.
Thanks for coming here.
I'm Captain Kirk today, and we're on the Enterprise Gibson.
Yes, I'm Mrs. Uhura today.
Oh, really? Okay.
Also für die Leute, die Danko vielleicht noch nicht kennen, er hat mittlerweile sein 5. Studioalbum veröffentlicht. Das heißt Below the Belt, wird demnächst rauskommen. Und es gibt auch ein ganz tolles Video, in dem unter anderem Elijah Wood mitspielt. Das werdet ihr demnächst sicher sehen. Und die Musik ist einfach richtig straight Rock'n'Roll, Riff-betonte Musik, würde ich sagen. Und ja, lassen wir mal ein bisschen was hören von Danko. So, Danko, I just told the people a bit about your music and the style. I hope, we do it. We'll talk in English and I'll translate something for the people out there.
Sure.
Well, how would you describe your style of music?
I only describe it always as hard rock music. That's it. Pretty simple.
Danko sagt, das ist Hard Rock, einfach. And people always talk about their initial inspirations, how they picked up the guitar, or what inspirations did you have for music?
Well, my inspiration to get interested in rock was probably bands like Kiss. But for me to pick up a guitar, it would probably be Eddie Van Halen. Growing up, I loved Van Halen, and I loved Eddie Van Halen's guitar playing. So that's probably what got me to pick up a guitar, because I wanted to be like Eddie Van Halen. And then I quickly realized I had no chops whatsoever to come close to being Eddie Van Halen. So I switched gears and tried to be like David Lee Roth.
Interesting. Well, er sagt, am Anfang hat er wie Kiss, das war so seine Anfangsinspiration, und dann ist er auf Eddie Van Halen gekommen. Er hat aber gemerkt, er hat gar nicht die technischen Fähigkeiten wie Eddie Van Halen. Dann hat er gedacht, er ist besser, er orientiert sich an David Lee Roth, den Sänger von Van Halen. And would you consider yourself more a guitar player, singer, or songwriter?
I usually consider myself to be a performer. I don't really think I'm an exceptional guitar player or an exceptional singer. I can do both at the same time fairly well by now, but nothing with any exceptional gift or anything. I think just performing is overall is what I kind of consider myself as. I don't consider myself a musician. I don't consider myself an artist, just a performer.
Okay, also Danko sagt, er sieht sich selber als Performer, weniger als Gitarrist, weil er da nicht die technischen Fähigkeiten hat. So, aber das ist so sein Ding. Das fand ich sehr interessant. Da werde ich gleich nochmal fragen, weil er sagt, er ist kein Künstler und kein Gitarrist. So most people usually, they wouldn't say, I'm not a guitar player, I'm not an artist. I think that's a great honesty to tell. And I can also say from the gigs I saw, that's totally true. You're really a great performer.
It's totally true. You're not a musician. I think I think there's too many people who call themselves artists, and that the word is bastardized by now. And it's used to add a bit of pretension to whatever you do, or I just find it it could be a very pretentious word used for people who basically do 3 chords in various patterns. So I don't consider myself an artist or a musician.
Also Danko sagt, das Wort ist mittlerweile überstrapaziert, dass man jetzt ein Künstler ist. Es gibt zu viele Leute, die 3 Akkorde spielen und dann von sich behaupten, sie wären jetzt ein Künstler. Er wird es nicht von sich behaupten. Er ist, wie gesagt, einfach auf der Bühne am stärksten. Er ist einfach ein Performer. Well, let's do some tech talk about the gear.
Okay.
So what guitars and amps did you use during the recording of Below the Belt?
It's funny that we're doing this interview at Gibson's headquarters in Berlin, because there's a lot of Gibson guitars used for Below the Belt. Mainly one of those Les Paul Juniors that are kind of back around there. I used a Les Paul Junior, a Les Paul, an SG, and a 335 sometimes. Those were the main guitars, if I remember correctly.
Also Danko sagt, er hat bei den Recording Sessions hauptsächlich oder eigentlich ausschließlich Gibson-Gitarren gespielt. Ist auch lustig, dass wir hier gerade im Gibson Showroom sind. Eine Les Paul Junior, die sieht man dann gleich noch im Bild, eine Les Paul und eine 335 kamen dann zu Einsatz.
I also used a Fender I also used a Fender F-hole Telly. I use that sometimes too.
Okay. Und ihm ist gerade noch eingefallen, er hat auch eine Fender Telecaster mit F-Löchern benutzt.
If we're allowed to say that.
Of course we are.
Or are you going to edit that out?
We won't. And what I realized in all the records so far, I would call it like the guitars really have this wall of sound. It's really coming out of the speakers. Do you know what technique you use to make this happen?
No technique really, more just using your ears and knowing what sound you want before you turn on the amp. I mean, the sound is in your head, and if you can match what's in your head to what's coming out of the amplifier, then you got it. And, you know, we don't, for this album, we didn't really triple or quadruple guitars. We just basically doubled it at the most.
So you recorded twice? One maybe for left and one for right channel?
You just do a double pass. It makes the guitars sound thicker and stuff. And for me, I don't really know particular amp settings or particular guitar settings or anything. I just know what's in my head and what I know to sound good. And we spent, you know, a good part of a day in the studio just getting the right sounds with the amplifiers we had. We used a lot of like really old school amps, like old Marshalls and stuff from the 70s, and you know, you just know what's in your head. We kind of A-beat once I thought I got a sound that matched what was in my head. We kind of A-beat it with records that I was trying to match, like old records that were, I'm going for this kind of sound off this album, or this guitar player's sound on this album. So we kind of A-beat it and just kind of figured out where we were, and that's how we went. You know, we didn't really use a technique. If that's a technique to use, that's what we used, you know.
Also Danko, ich habe gefragt, was für technische Sachen zum Einsatz kam, weil ich hör auf den Platten immer, dass es so eine richtig fette Gitarrenbrettwand ist. Und Danko hat gemeint, er hat einfach diesen Klang im Kopf, und da hat er dann probiert, es so gut wie möglich umzusetzen. Manchmal auch Probe gehört mit Aufnahmen, die er im Kopf hatte. Und prinzipiell wurden die Gitarren nur verdoppelt, nicht 3- oder 4-fach aufgenommen, sondern oldschool, 2-fach. Well, did you work together with a producer, actually, for the new album?
Yeah, we usually do. When we go into the studio, we usually work with a producer. This album, we worked with our buddy Matt DiMatteo, or Matty DiMatteo, whatever he wants to call himself. But Matt, we worked with on We Sweat Blood and Sleep Is the Enemy. And he engineered Born a Lion. So he's been on every studio album of ours except for the last one, Never Too Loud, which we did in LA with Nick Raskulinecz. Born a Lion was produced by, our first studio album was produced by Bill Bell, but Matt was engineering that. And so, you know, Matt's produced now 3 of our albums, and we have a good rapport with him, and he's like our buddy. We hang out with him, and I mean, we hang with him during the whole process, and it's just like your buddy doing a record with you. So there's a very informal feel to it. There's nothing where we're walking around on eggshells around people's egos. It's pretty much, you know, we're all trying to get the right sound, and, you know, if I have something to say, I'll say it. You know, same with him. If he has an idea, he says it, and it's really up to us to decide whether we're going to use it or not.
Well, that will be the next question. I think with every band there's different percentage of how much things the producer does. So in your case, did he give you any new song ideas, or did you come at the studio and with a song already really ready? Or
well, the percentage of a producer's input also has to do with how well prepared or a band is. We like to be prepared enough where we present the songs to the producer, and usually, you know, if depending on how much time there is, we'll do all the songs.
But did he tell you, for example, okay, let's put the bridge there?
Well, that's just it.
Might be.
Well, that's just it. Is with the songs that we present to the producer, it's in their court, and they can come up with ideas or not. If they feel the song is finished, then we just record the song. Most times than not, there's always 1 or 2 things suggested for each song. Now, once again, it's whether we decide to use those suggestions or not. We're pretty fair with the songs, and we're not going to reject an idea just because, oh, well, it's the producer's idea, not ours. Mm-hmm. It's all for the good of the song, and it doesn't really matter where the idea comes from. But Matt suggested a few things on the album, and he let a lot of stuff just be as well.